Goswami Maharaj would spend months and months at a time in the personal association of Srila Prabhupada, being taught by him, being trained by him, and constantly being given very, very difficult assignments to fulfill. He invigorated the preaching in Germany. He invigorated the preaching in Paris. Then Srila Prabhupada called him back to Los Angeles. And he told him he was going to establish the GBC body. And he and just a couple other leaders, he actually inquired from them, who else do you think should be on this GBC body? And in this way, Srila Prabhupada established the Governing Body Commission to be the final authority for spiritual and managerial subject in our whole society. Srila Prabhupada was planning to go to India to establish the preaching there. He knew that that place would be very, very difficult for his relatively new Western disciples. Srila Prabhupada made Tamal Krishna Goswami the first GBC for all of India. And he personally took him. From Los Angeles they went to Hawaii. From Hawaii they went to Japan. And we know that wonderful story of how Tamal Krishna Goswami was such intimate relationship with Prabhupada. The two of them became a team to somehow or other convince the Dai Nippon printers to lower their prices. In this way, Srila Prabhupada very intimately taught Tamal Krishna Goswami how being a devotee of the Lord doesn't only mean chanting and dancing, but it also means being very, very intelligent, to not waste 1 cent of Krishna's money, and how to defeat even materialistic persons in their own game of materialism in the name of Krishna. And Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj became very empowered in that line as well, which very few devotees are able or willing to do. In the beginning days of preaching in India, it was in about 1970 when they came here, Srila Prabhupada saw that the Western devotees were, although appreciated as dancing white elephants, chanting in the streets, when it came to establishing our society, they were very easily cheated. And also, in this different culture, subjected to many diseases and oftentimes bewildering situations, Prabhupada actually depended on Goswami Maharaj to keep this yatra together and to make it strong. The things, the activities, the responsibilities that Srila Prabhupada did not entrust anybody but himself to do in India, he entrusted to Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. Some examples. Just about a day and a half before Goswami Maharaj left this world in Mayapur, I was, for about 3 hours in the night, the two of us were speaking alone. For about an hour and a half we were walking together, and for about an hour and a half we sat in his room. And so many subjects were spoken. During that time he was remembering some of the challenges that Srila Prabhupada gave to him in preaching. I'll explain one of them. He said this was one of the most difficult services. In London, George Harrison agreed to give 19,000 US dollars to print the first publication of Krishna book. Now that Srila Prabhupada had a handful of sincere, dedicated devotees in India, he very much wanted to distribute this Krishna book profusely in India. Also, there was being arranged various Pandal programs in places. So this would very much establish the credibility of our society. So he wanted it in time for these Pandal programs, which were coming very soon. He sent devotees to pick up the Krishna book at the docks in Calcutta. But at that time, there was a strike amongst the dock workers. And for those of you who know how things are in India, and actually all over the world, where there is strike, there is mafia, there is gundas, there is risk of life for anyone who tries to interfere. So they would not allow anyone to go into the ports, the workers, customers. Whatever was on the boats remained there. Nothing was allowed to come out, and no one was allowed to cross the lines at the threat of death. So it was an impossible situation to get the books. And it appeared the strike was going to go on for a long, long time. The most violent, demoniac people were there to uphold this political campaign. So Srila Prabhupada turned to Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj and said, I want you to get those books immediately. So he went there and he saw the situation. How could anyone, if there was like thousands of kilos of books, how do you just get it out of there? So what to do? So what happened is he started going to various political parties, different ministers in Calcutta, and every one of them said, impossible, we cannot go near that strike. Nobody could reach those docks. So what would you have done? He could have written to Prabhupada and say, Prabhupada, impossible, it cannot be done. But he understood Prabhupada wanted those books. This man was the very embodiment of determination, unflinching determination to serve his spiritual master. Now, he had only been in India for a few weeks, hardly a couple months actually. So he didn't know how India worked. And for those of you who live in India, you know, to get anything done in India politically, you have to know how India works. But for him, it just had to be done. So he approached every possible authority in Calcutta, and they all told him impossible. He went to Delhi by trains, third-class trains. While in Delhi, he was going to small people, to bigger people, to bigger people. He just wouldn't give up. Finally, he ended up, after days and days and days of just from early morning till night visiting different government officials, he landed in the office of the Minister for Imports and Exports for the whole country, and got him to sign papers to release the books as an extreme emergency measure. Then he went to Calcutta and went to the local people with this order from the federal minister. And the books were released. In time for the Cross Maidan first major Pandal program here in Bombay.
You were listening to Radhanath Swami on devotionalnectar.com.